Hello and welcome to IGPP Expert Talks. I'm Heena Goswami, Editorial Consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. In our ongoing series about artificial intelligence, to discuss its various aspects and impacts, today we are joined by Ms. Maya Sherman. Ms. Maya is an AI policy researcher and ethicist. Ms. Maya graduated with her MSc in Social Science of the Internet at Oxford University. She is presently also the Banyan Fellow for Tech Development as part of the American India Foundation and was recently also the member of Future of Work Committee at the Global Partnership on AI. Welcome to IGPP Expert Talks, Maya.
Thank you so much. So wonderful to be here.
So, I just wanted to begin with recently we have seen a surge in AI technology being used by common users, right? And while there are many upsides to it, we have also seen some downsides like common users, their safety has been compromised as they have fallen victim to deepfake content, but they, hesitate to report such incidents. On the other hand, we also see that some high profile individuals like Taylor Swift, in India actresses like Rashmika Mandana, Katrina Kaif have also been targeted by deepfake technology. So how can we ensure that common users are confident enough to report incidents of deep misuse of deepfake technology, and they also be ensured that their concerns will receive the same kind of attention as any other high profile individual?
Thank you so much for this crucial question, especially in these very alarming times that we are seeing much more deepfake incidents happening on a global scale. And interestingly enough, we're seeing it a bit more in the, again, across celebrities and in the cinema industries. And clearly it shows this regulatory void that we want to address. I would say that the shift towards the solution has to include the three entities involved, which are, first of all, the users. Users need to know that they have a counterpart, a platform to trust, the platform itself, which is required to do much more self-regulation, not only when high-profile individuals are involved. And the third angle, which will be the government, policymakers. The combination of the three should give the right answer. The problem is that we are seeing this regulatory void from the government side due to the novelty of the phenomenon. This leads to the fact that platforms are the ones that are usually self-regulating the rules of the game and creating a place which only certain entities that have a potential impact on the platforms, such as Taylor Swift, and of course, many of Bollywood actresses, because in many cases, the business profits are still at stake. And the users are left a bit hopeless because they know that if they report, they will not get the same attention. And to solve this, we clearly need to see much broader consortiums of industry and government together. We already seen several attempts of Meta to create this kind of consultations on regulatory prototyping, policy prototyping. We need to understand a bit more how users and platforms can interact in a way that all is considered. Expecting the platforms to do this alone is a bit ambitious. In the end, these are private entities that do have, I would say, the monopoly on data, which is a very sensitive asset. But this is the place for policymakers to enter. The reason that it's not happening yet, it's due to the complexity of deepfake. And it's something that we do need to understand, that AI can produce deepfakes, but in the same time, AI produces a lot of beneficial things. So the regulators are in this very tricky point, understanding how much can we regulate so we will not censor or prohibit the usage. But to go into this place that users will feel safe, and that's the point of the question, we need to make sure that the platforms do not act alone. They're not acting in a place where They are the only ones setting the rules. We are seeing already increasing regulatory attempts by the AI Act. It takes time, but hopefully this will bring a new energy to creating more regulatory initiatives and thinkings towards how can we make platforms a safer place for users, all users combined. Because of course, till now, only, again, certain profiles got the scrutiny, but it's also positive because the fact that this brings the topic into the attention of policymakers as well, it's a good sign, because hopefully from this kind of instances, we can go and start speaking, how can we scale it up into a regulation that includes everyone into the table?
With the surge in the use of deepfake technology, issues like fake news, revenge porn, such content has been generated. And this is especially complex because such content is generated by individuals who are known to the victim. Do you think, because of the novelty of the technology itself, do we have enough guardrails in place? Or because it's a new technology, what we have today to protect women and female users, that's not enough. And the technology is so complex that we'll have to come up with more guardrails.
So clearly, the question of intersectionality and the accelerated impact on women and other vulnerable groups in society is not special to deepfake. The problem is that with deepfake, the implications are much severe. We have already seen cases of physical harms due to the publication of deepfakes in more conservative societies. We have seen the potential on suicide. And so clearly, in terms of the evidence, we are seeing that women are targeted. So the question is, if the regulation is doing enough. I feel that the regulation is trying to do, but not specifically in the realm of the vulnerable groups. And I think that this nuanced understanding of intersectionality, the need to increase regulation in certain parts of the population, it's something that we need, of course, to test, to see how it works. The easier way will be, of course, to enact legislations and regulatory measures that apply to all. But as not all of us are the same, the implications on each of us should be different. The question is, of course, how do we make regulation that applies to only certain types of users without turning it to be too preventive? And that's also part of the discussion. How do we make sure that we are able to prohibit deepfakes only, but not harm the fact that we can still generate content using AI? We can also create some actually great things for women as well. There have been actually fantastic evidence and pilots trying to show a soccer game that instead of Mbappe and Messi, they actually put women in these videos. And that's something that we need to remember. AI doesn't do only deepfakes that are harmful. Deepfake, the synthetic use of content, can also serve for good, can also help break some of the biases. And this is where the balance comes. How do we make sure that the negative case studies won't be amplified? And as per your question, the way to do this will require much more contextual regulation. At this point of time, I do not know if necessarily the AI Act, that is a very rigorous framework, as well as other initiatives, of course, some of them clearly led by India and other main players in the industry. We need to pilot a bit more how certain regulations would look like when we are targeting specific groups. How do we create certain use cases in which certain videos, for instance, will be labeled, will be trademarked as more offensive? For instance, can we label certain videos of nudity and certain contents in a way that will automatically create certain alerts? This, of course, requires some, I would say, deeper understanding of the victims and the audiences involved. But when we are discussing about a tool that is not purely harmful by its nature, but it's also the question of who is using it, I believe that we definitely need to think in a different way on how to regulate it, and be extremely mindful when we are thinking on the impact on the female users, on youth, and the list goes on and on, because the definition of diversity and vulnerability in society changes according to places. And that's are the places that we also need to think. Each country needs to think of the use cases that might be harmful for their own particular society. And we can also speak on the state level. We can speak sometimes even in certain employment surroundings. But I do think that this kind of thinking will enable us to have the guardrail that you've mentioned.
I'm sorry, I'm lingering a little bit more on the harmful effects of AI technology, but I wanted to cite this report, Deep Trace report, which suggests that 99% of the deepfake, which are pornographic, they are targeting women. And consider that against the fact that there's an underrepresentation of women in STEM sectors and in AI itself. Do you think there's a systematic societal and regulatory failure in addressing this issue of women's representation in technology? And what strategies can be implemented to rectify this disparity?
So I would like to take your question and answer it like much broadly, action. There is a systematic failure in representing women in society, period. I feel that, unfortunately, AI is a tool. It's a wonderful tool, and deepfake can have its ambiguous moments, but in the end, it's a reflection, it's a mirror of our society. When we are seeing the vulnerabilities of women, with deepfake specifically, it just shows that we, as society of practitioners again, of different groups, of different cultures, still do not know how to give the right sensitivity to women and protect them, considering their own vulnerabilities. The STEM discipline, I would say, is a significant example, because it touches a lot of this fragile points. It touches on the point that women have different employment settings, which we need to solve. There are salary gaps. Of course, women are much more vulnerable when it comes to pregnancies, hiring, questions that can be incredibly biased. So I used to work on designing diversity tools with recruiters to see how we can promote this kind of discussions. But whatever is happening currently with AI shows again and again that, yes, we don't have enough guardrails to protect the ones who do not fit the usual mainstream to what a practitioner in STEM is supposed to be. And even worse, we are seeing that the same victims of what we used to see and again in porn videos in the past, when we have deepfake, the victims remain the same. It's the tools that change. To do this kind of change, we need definitely a multi-stakeholder approach. Users need to be part of the discussion. And I feel that in many senses, that's what we're kind of missing. We don't hear enough the woman narratives and how victims perceive the situation because of various reasons, because the governments lead the discussion quite substantially. The platforms have set the rules. We have regulators, we have countries, we have so many entities involved, but the end user does not really have the voice to impact or to say what they're thinking, even by reporting. As you've rightly mentioned in the beginning, users are afraid to even report because they know that no one will protect them. So I do hope to see something that will enable users to get this feedback, to tell their voice through the platform. We do have the technology for this. It requires the motivation. It requires a lobby. But hopefully with this kind of evidence is the one that you just mentioned, and just generally the broad understanding that there are very severe implications to AI when it's not used properly and not moderated, I hope we will see platforms taking a more proactive approach, giving built-in feedback mechanisms in which the vulnerable users can speak up, say what they're going through, and give them the opportunity to trust again the platform. So I hope that that's where we take the work with the platforms and the government, but this of course takes time. And of course, there are other regulation that needs to be established in the moment from the European perspective, and of course also from the Indian perspective and South Asian generally. So yeah, that's my take on this.
To what extent do considerations of user ethics influence the generation of harmful content, including misinformation, disinformation, and deepfakes? And how can awareness be raised among users regarding the detrimental societal repercussions of their actions in creating such content?
Definitely. User ethics, I believe, is at the core of most of the policies when we are thinking of content moderation tools, automated, the manual ones. The main goal behind it is to make sure that the user in the end won't be harmed. There are some problems with it sometimes, and it's something that we should address. We have seen so many instances in which content moderation tools did not have enough sociocultural sensitivity to protect the users. We've seen cases in which improper translation of certain buttons in social media platforms impacted and ignited physical conflicts and violence. And this is something that connects exactly to the second part of the question, where awareness comes to place. While we want to speak in very high ethical guidelines of transparency and accountability and fairness and social justice, we need to make sure that the user is aware of the rules of the game. And I feel that this is something that we are learning now that ChatGPT is all over and AI is such a big buzzword and people are almost required to know what it is and what's deepfake. Users need to understand the opportunities as well as the harms. And this will bring, I would say, the practical dimension of user ethics, because without having the user involved, it can become very artificial. Currently, we are seeing like wonderful ethical frameworks of guidelines, and also for content moderators to know what to be more sensitive to, what to put more the attention. But users need to understand what they are facing when they put their data online. And this is a gap that we're seeing that has to go way beyond the users who are more affiliated with STEM. Everyone who is slightly involved in the digital world, which is today, I would say, everyone. It's very hard not to be involved. It's literally all around us, even if we don't have a smartphone. Literacy is key. Users need to understand what are the consequences of the data that they put. It's not just a free platform. It's a platform in which data serves as a strategic asset. It's the new oil for the platforms. When we are giving data, there is a commercial benefit behind. Users need to also understand this and have enough protective measures and judgment to know what to put and when. I believe that once we are able to address this awareness gap, the literacy that we're seeing across places, and it's a very hard gap that is being addressed, but once we're able to do this, I believe that we'll be able to give this substance and the essence to user ethics, because currently it's a bit high level. We need to make sure that everyone is aware of this new digital ecosystem. So yeah.
We have some impending regulation on AI that we hope will be in place soon that aims to curb the harms of AI technology. But there has been a historical inadequacy of regulatory efforts in mitigating harmful content generation. Do you think what changes can be implemented in the short term to enhance the efficacy of regulatory mechanism? Whatever we have presently today, or what should be added to those to address these challenges of harmful content?
I would say that what we are missing, I mean, I think that today there is already a pretty rigorous baseline for ethical frameworks, the understanding of content moderation, the difference between the automated ones and the manual ones. What we're kind of missing in these regulations is allowing literacy and user feedback built in the regulation. We should not take as a default that everyone understands what the regulation is saying. First of all, because the digital divide exists. And if someone would ask me why this regulatory void is happening, and more than this, why there are so many different actors that are able to abuse this void, is because we still don't have the right mechanisms for digital literacy, fluency, and awareness in place. It should be part of the regulation. It's not an added bonus. I feel that till now, because again, we're exploring what deepfake is, and we are still exploring. I believe that technologically, deepfake will go much worse. Today, I'll put it that way. There are some wonderful apps. It's very accessible, but it's still easy to distinguish in some cases. There are the places that no, as we've seen now in actually some of the recent elections in Europe, that some candidates actually did not get enough voters due to deepfake. And these are the places that we need to work on. Regulation today also needs to take into consideration that if we are trying to set the rules for the future of deepfake, we need to make sure that everyone involved understand what it is. This requires the consortium of industry, governments, and users, possibly of more entities, but these discussions cannot be outside of the regulation. We cannot just have regulations discussing what's good and what's bad in deepfake. And we are seeing this because of course, it's a pretty broad topic. But I believe that without it, we'll just be failing in the enforcement. We'll just see additional Cambridge Analytica in the deepfake form. We'll see very problematic instances in which deepfake will lead sometimes to quite lethal outcomes because of this digital divide. So hopefully regulation will address the right mechanisms and tools that will make sure that everyone start in the same starting point.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Maya.